3, 2, 1.
Yes, that is exactly how we are all feeling right now. I am your host, Ras Guevara, along with the saddest man in Washington Heights, Richard McLeod.
Yep.
How you doing, buddy?
Bad. I'm doing bad.
Yep.
For those who just heard our clip to start the podcast off, that's my uncle. Shout out to Uncle Scott and my cousin who listened to this podcast and recorded that. Our family's been kind of known for those Uncle Scott reactions over the years. Was hoping there weren't going to be that many this year, but here we are after, in my opinion, the worst loss of the Robert Saleh era, and it's not even close.
I mean, Uncle Scott, you are not alone. I'm pretty sure that reaction was had all over every household that is miserable enough to root for the New York Jets. But let's just jump right into it. Welcome to the Just Jets podcast, I guess, powered by RCG Digital Media. Listen, we are miserable. We are not in a good state of mind. I agree with you. It's probably the worst loss of the Saleh era. Just a complete and utter vibe shift. But before we get started, let's just bring in our executive producer so we can kind of go through our instant reactions. Mark, why don't you just jump right in? Join the miserable.
Do I have to?
Feelings, depression circle that we are about to embark on this episode. But let's just start with you, Rich. Tell me, what's going through your head right now?
Misery. I'm honestly, more than anything, I feel angry at myself because I came into this game in the podcast that we've done leading up to this and the newsletter that came out the morning of the game saying like, okay, that Patriot game allowed me to like not stress and we've turned the page and this team doesn't play down to their opponents anymore and they beat the bad teams. And the Jets basically said like, go fuck yourself in this awful, awful, awful performance.
Yeah.
Nope. Like other than the three guys that we picked for the game balls, and we're quite literally the only three guys who you could even pick for game balls this week, every single player, even the quarterback, was bad today.
Yeah.
The offense sucked. The coaching was awful, and we will get into that. The defense even, they gave up 10 points, but they let Bo Nix on 2 drives go down the field, specifically on a 3rd down, and let their best receiver and maybe their only good receiver be wide open in the end zone with no one within 10 yards of him to catch the only touchdown in the game. It's just an awful loss. And I have to say, the most expected missed field goal in the final minute of a game that has ever happened.
Oh, you've called it. You called it right before. He's like, oh, of course he's gonna miss this. And it's brutal, dude. Everything. You're right. Everything sucked, from the weather, from the crowd. There was a ton of Broncos jerseys for some reason. I guess people weren't coming out to the game. It was just a complete and utter vibe shift from Thursday. But Mark, tell me, man, like what's going through your lovely mind right now?
Everything about this game screams New York Jets 2023. It seemed like every game last year, the weather was brutal. It seemed like every game last year, the defense played well enough, but gave up that one bad drive. The offense couldn't put up a touchdown. It was literally like we've rolled back the clock a year. The only difference being that we had Aaron Rodgers, who almost gave us a chance. But I mean, Zach Wilson, I joked in the newsletter, Zach Wilson revenge game. This is not, but it kind of seems like it is, because this was the game that the Jets had every game last season.
I mean, I guarantee you he had a grin on the sideline. I guarantee you he had a grin on the sideline and he was enjoying every minute of it. Every minute of it, he had like, it's just brutal, man. It's just brutal. He's probably thinking like, you thought I was the problem? Yes, Zach, you were still the problem. This game was bad, but you were still the problem. And like Rich said earlier, it's tough. It's even tough to look for silver linings. It's tough to look for good performances in this miserable shit show of a game. It not only, Mark, it didn't just echoes of 2023. It's fucking my entire Jets fandom has been similar to this, just letdown after letdown after letdown, and it's just I hate to use the Jets, same old Jets kind of tagline, but it fucking was reeking of that shit today. The crowd was fucking like weird, like nothing felt the way it felt like on Thursday.
The vibe was bad. Like the second the game starts and their first drive is 3 plays, -8 yards and a punt. You're just like, ooh. It was basically the opposite of how the Patriot game started. I know they didn't score on that opening drive, but you could just tell they were clicking that day.
Yeah.
And one other thing before we move on into the meat of the show, I understand that the weather was bad. Are the Jets the first team that has ever played in the fucking rain? Like everything, the play calling is conservative. Oh, like nobody can hold on to the ball. Nobody can make a play. It rains all the time in these games. The one for the Jets, they, like Mark said, they played in basically on nothing but rain games, what feels like the last 5 years.
Yeah.
But other than the dome stadiums, it pretty much rains throughout all the year. And it only seems like the Jet games are the ones that are like, 6-0 and 10-9 and historic lows in the stats. Like, I don't want to use that as an excuse. I'm so tired of it. It's not like they played in a blizzard. It was raining. Like, I just had it just pisses me off.
Oh, I'm with you, man. I'm with you. Listen, I don't know. I am not an NFL coach. I am not, a smart man by any means. But when the weather's shitty, maybe you don't start the game off with 3 straight passes, and maybe your wide receiver, who's wide receiver 1, maybe wears gloves to start the game off. Maybe. I don't know. That's just me. But that being said, Rich, who are you awarding the coveted Rich McLeod game ball from this game?
As many
Bronco, as much as you want, do not give it to a Bronco.
I mean, I don't think any of them deserve it either. Maybe some of their rushers, but on defense, that's about it. But yeah, kind of slim pickings, but I benefit from getting to pick first, so I picked the only one that I feel like is obvious, which was DJ Reed. Pretty much right from the get-go, he was breaking up, the handful of wobbly deep passes that Bo Nix threw. And I think the big thing on that is it's low-key kind of hard to when you're trying to break up a deep ball that's so badly underthrown, because a lot of times you get those bogus pass interference calls because they're so underthrown. He did a good job around that, and he made a pivotal pass breakup on what was really the Broncos' last drive of the game, where they missed that field goal that gave the Jets a chance, should have led to the Jets winning the game. That was a really great play. Made a lot of tackles in this game. He was really, really good. The Broncos sort of tried to challenge him, at least more than Sauce, and Reed pretty much stopped everything that they threw at him.
No, he definitely was way more active, and they were definitely particularly targeting him early on, and he did play a decent game. What about you, Mr. Levine? Who are you awarding your coveted game ball to?
Definitely no one on offense. My guy's going to be Quincy Williams.
Yeah.
He had 3 defensive stops in the run game, 2 tackles for a loss. He had 2 pass defenses, which combined for a loss of 1 yard. Yep. He had that huge hit for the fumble on Tyler Bidet, which then the offense gets the pass interference penalty to the 1 yard line, can't score a touchdown. Why you would keep Breece Hall in the whole time when you have Braylon Allen? That's a topic for a different quarter. But my guy this week is going to be Quincy Williams.
Quincy Williams is one of the hardest tacklers in the NFL, and like when he hits you, dude. It's like you stay hit. I mean, you saw with Bidet, the running back for the Broncos, like he took a shot to the back and he collapsed on the sideline, and they had to be carted out. I mean, you don't want to ever see anybody get hurt, but that's the type of player that Quincy Williams is. He is fun to watch, but you don't expect to be saying that out of this game. Nobody was fun to watch. Once you lose, everything sucks. But my game ball is going to Braylon Allen. Braylon Allen It's not his fault that he's not getting used properly. It's not his fault that the coaching staff does not recognize what they have in this man. I mean, they still have him in kickoffs and punt returns. They still have him in special teams. Like it just boggles my mind that a kid can demonstrate that he is strong enough to continue moving after being, first point of contact. You still drive players backwards. He only had 8 carries for 34 yards, but it was a little over 4 yards per carry. His only target, he caught it. He's stellar in pass protection as always. And it's just not his fault that he's not being utilized. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, he's exciting to watch. He runs really, really hard. And it's just, you want to see more of him. And it sucks that, we don't get to see it, but my game ball goes to him today.
By the way, you say Braylon Allen only had just over 4 yards a carry. Breece Hall had 0.4 yards a carry.
Oh, Jesus.
Just for frame of reference there.
Oh, my Lord. Jesus. So, I mean, listen, we just, talked about like the thing that this coaching staff is unable to do. It is just recognize in the moment who is having success and who is not. And that is a perfect segue into our first topic of the game, which is the horrendous coaching that took place in this game. Let's just, I guess, begrudgingly jump right into the first quarter. Thank you, Mark, for that. Rich, again, man, listen, you said it at the very top. This is probably the worst game in the Robert Saleh era, basically because of the expectations, right? Because of the expectations, because of the apparent discrepancy of talent between the Broncos and us. But tell me, what are your impressions of the coaching staff's effort today?
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. It's the worst loss in this coaching staff's regime because of the expectation. Like we've watched this game 15 times in the last 4 years. That's nothing new. But for this game to happen with Aaron Rodgers actually as the quarterback, like this is not supposed to happen anymore. Right. Big theme of my newsletter coming out of this game is like we were told it wasn't going to look like that anymore, and it looked and felt a hell of a lot similar as it has over the last several years. And it's disappointing, but I think, week 1, I think we were disappointed and sad. But after this game, it's anger, it's vitriol, because you went into this season and the one thing other than health, which every team worries about, is the coaching staff bad enough where it could get in the way of where this team is going?
Yeah.
And in my opinion, this is the first time that like the coaching staff was why they lost a football game. Obviously the players were all bad as well, but they were completely unprepared on offense. Defensively, in the third quarter, they were not good overall in the whole game. They were effective, and giving up 10 points should be enough to win in any game. And Robert Saleh, after today, the Jets are now 1-8 under Robert Saleh in games where they had extra rest. So coming off a Thursday night game or a bye week, that is atrocious. I don't know what this coaching staff does every week. What the hell were they doing the last 10 days? Beats me. And one last thing, specifically on Hackett. I've criticized him before. I think I've already said you can't spell Hackett without hack. And today I thought was his worst play calling game of the year after 2 encouraging ones. They really abandoned everything that worked for them in the Titans and the Patriots win. The Patriots win, it was that like quick passing attack that they really like early on in this game they didn't try to do other than that first drive, and that first drive was kind of just blown up from a sack. But then it was just kind of like run pass. And the two receiver set, or the 2 back set that they were running against the Titans, didn't run it at all against the Patriots. I don't think I saw it a single time today either. Again, yeah, I know the weather was a factor, but to not even try it, I thought was really bizarre. Like put Breece out wide and have Allen in the backfield. I don't remember seeing that very much, if at all. And Mark alluded to it in our instant reactions, but the worst sequence of this entire game, the Jets get the ball at the 1 yard line. They're gifted that opportunity because on a kind of like desperation heave to the end zone, Allen Lazard draws pass interference. And at this point, Breece Hall, I believe, still has negative yards in the game. He was getting blown up in every play, and pretty much every time he touched the ball, instantly going down, as opposed to the Broncos always kind of falling forward. We've talked about this in the Niners game. So he was having a really hard time. I would have instantly put Braylon Allen in on that opportunity.
Yeah.
They want to give Hall a shot, fine. Gets blown up on the first play, can't squeeze through, get to the end zone. Second down, same situation. I would have put in Allen at that point. They keep Hall in again. He gets hit. He tries to spin, can't get in. Third down. Jets then had quite a while to prepare for this third down play because the quarter ended and then the break was extended because of that Bronco running back getting carted off the field or off of the sideline. So they really had like a good 5+ minutes to draw up this play. They finally bring in Braylon Allen. I'm like, okay, here we go. They have Solomon Thomas as the fullback, which they did once against the Patriots. They had done on the first down play of this possession. And instead of giving the ball to Braylon Allen, they throw it. And what is even worse than that is they threw it to fucking Solomon Thomas, a defensive tackle.
Yes.
It's obviously incomplete. Rodgers didn't have anything because the Broncos didn't bite. So he was covered. Obviously, he's not going to catch a contested ball. So Rodgers just kind of tossed it out of bounds. They go for it on fourth down. And here's a fucking surprise. False start. They have to kick the field goal. That was the worst sequence of the entire game. That is entirely Nathaniel Hackett. And it was just a microcosm of the entire game on both sides of the ball. It was just awful.
That is the moment of the game where I was like, oh shit. You know, we were up 6-0 going into the half, but that series, not being able to punch it in from the one, outsmarting ourselves, right? You mentioned Solomon Thomas coming into the game. Solomon Thomas comes into the game. He's your fullback in the first attempt, stuffed, no gain. Then you move him from behind center. You move him to the strong side. I was like, oh, okay, great. Now we're going to impose our will. We're going to run into the heavy side of the formation. No, we outsmart ourselves. Like, oh, we're gonna run away from the heavy side, despite that we have our tight end and Solomon Thomas playing fullback on the strong side. We're gonna go try to fool them instead of punching it in the mouth. Instead of punching it in, we're gonna try to fool them on the counter to the weak side. No, they did not bite, and they sniffed it out and stuffed Breece again. And like you said, they bring in Braylon. And the entire stadium knew that they were trying something funny with Solomon Thomas. The entire stadium knew that. And I'm like, I was at the game when I tell my wife, is like, they're gonna fucking outsmart themselves. They're gonna try to do something cute. And sure enough, little rollout. No, nobody bites. The Broncos have a good defense. Unlike the Jets, they're well coached. Sean Payton, Van Joseph, they're well coached. They stay home. They stayed home the entire game. And that like you hit the nail right on the head. That was a microcosm of the entire game. And we got to talk about the penalties too, because penalties are always a coaching issue, right? And after the game, they talked about the false start penalties. The Jets were penalized 15 times, 13 accepted for 90 yards. But they asked Aaron Rodgers about the penalties, and I actually want to play something for you and tell me what you think about this.
The cadence specifically, Robert said that might be something you guys have to dial back a little bit. Is that something you think could potentially help the situation?
It's one way to do it. The other way is hold them accountable. I mean, we haven't had an issue. We've had one false start. Morgan had one false start, I believe, until this. So, you know, it's been a weapon. We use it every day in practice. We rarely have a false start. And to have, 5 today, it seemed like, 4 or 5. Yeah, that seems like an outlier. I don't know if we need to make mass changes based on, kind of an outlier game.
That's your quarterback.
That's
And your
really
coach.
embarrassing for Robert Saleh. Sorry to cut you off, but
Yep. No, that's exactly where I was going.
I didn't see this after the game. That clip of him was writing the newsletter and had it on in the background. But I mean, that is really embarrassing for the coach who is often criticized for being too nice, maybe being a bit of a pushover. For him to come out of this game and one of the things he says is like, oh, maybe it's too complicated, maybe it's too hard for the other guys, and then have the quarterback instantly contradict you and be like, no, let's hold the players accountable. That's really embarrassing.
I mean, that is exactly where I was going with this. Like, not being on the same page with your quarterback and attempting to just pull an answer out of thin air, right? Because if you think it's the cadence, like, wouldn't that be something that you would address during the week in practice? If you think that is the source of the issue, wouldn't that be something that you talk about? Like, do you not speak to your players on the sideline? Like, are they like insulated in a bubble and you can't get to them and ask them questions? Are you not the head coach of this football team? And I mean, listen, the coaching is it just baffles me week to week. Every time he goes up to the podium, I am embarrassed. I am embarrassed to be a Jets fan because he always just says the most asinine things. He never says the right things. He always puts his foot in his mouth. It's just confusing, man. Like, it's just confusing and frustrating.
And yeah, if I have to hear Robert Saleh say the same things after every loss, where it's like, oh, we have to look at this.
Oh, dude.
And this, and it's always about something that is so like painfully obvious. And he says it after the game. It's like, don't look at it. Just do it. You're a head coach. I know you have a clip, so if you want
here we go with Mr. Saleh.
Why not give Braylon a carry there? I know Breece has done a lot of things. It just didn't seem like his day, and Braylon looks like he's kind of built for that situation at the 1 yard line.
No, for sure. Definitely something we can look at, but it was still kind of early when that play came about, and like I said, we're always going to lean on Breece. He's our workhorse back, and Braylon started getting a little bit. Got a few more carries as the game went on, but it's always something to look at. But we don't. It's definitely something to look at.
No, it's not something to look at. It's something to do. It is something to do.
That question, he didn't even seem like he was remote. He said the same thing 4 times.
No, it's not early in the game. You're at the 1 yard. Again, this goes back to what I was saying when I gave him my game ball. It's just like you just do not know your personnel. You do not make adjustments. It's like you make a plan and you stick to it, and Breece didn't have it today for whatever reason. Maybe they are running backs who are not good in the rain, right? That's a given. Like, some running backs are never comfortable, and you should know that. You know what I'm saying? Like, this isn't the first time he's played in the rain. If he's not having it, why not give Braylon a shot? And then you bring him in, and then you try to get cute with a rollout and a pass play. Like, we're trying to outsmart ourselves, and we consistently look foolish. We got out coached. Sean Payton and the Broncos waited out. Our play calling was like we were down by 2 touchdowns. It was pass heavy in the rain where we were struggling. It wasn't just them. We were struggling also. And then we decide that we were going to let Aaron Rodgers throw the ball 42 times, and that was a decision that was made today in the rain, in the terrain. Like, it was raining. I was there, and it was raining consistently the entire game. It's just frustrating, man. It's absolutely frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much to say. Their rushing attack wasn't working with Breece. I think to some extent, like, throwing it a lot was a good call, but I think, to your point, with the conditions, the pivot that should have been made is run the ball with Allen more, see how that goes. Anytime they did, like, he wasn't amazing, but like you said, 4.1 yards per attempt in this kind of game is like nothing to be upset with.
Right.
And he should have gotten a lot more opportunities, not only at the goal line, but throughout the game. And that maybe could have at least like neutralized that pass rush just enough and made life a tiny bit easier on Rodgers. But they didn't do that. Didn't do any of it.
And that's the thing, right? Your star players are supposed to step up. Your star players are supposed to help your quarterback. And that is the perfect segue to our second quarter. Breece Hall didn't have it today. He's been uneven, sort of to start the season. And then Garrett, man, he's I don't know. We might have a Garrett problem. That's a perfect segue. What is going on with Breece and Garrett? Look, coming into the year, we all expected monster seasons out of Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson. They are our two best offensive playmakers, without a shadow of a doubt. Outside of Aaron Rodgers, they are the players he is supposed to lean on and he's supposed to rely while he's quote unquote shaking off the rust and kind of coming back from injury. It's not supposed to be, oh well, Breece doesn't have it, we don't have the offense. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not supposed to be that. Allen Lazard is not supposed to be Aaron Rodgers' first read in his progressions. Every time it felt like Allen Lazard was his first read. Every single time. Tell me what were your impressions from the lack of performances from both Breece Hall and Garrett today?
Yeah, I think we can start with Garrett Wilson. We've talked about this a little bit the last few weeks. I think it continued to crop up in this game quite a bit of just like, it seems like Garrett and Aaron Rodgers like don't have that chemistry yet. Like, that's interesting. And you kind of thought it would have gotten there by now. Not just from like the preseason and the practices, but now they've got 3-4 games under their belt. And it's still like looks just as off as it did in the first week. And it that doesn't seem to be getting better. And it's just really interesting. And I understand that Garrett's gone up against like a really great run of cornerbacks. But like, you're a number one receiver. Like, that's part of the game. Who doesn't get like stopped by number one cornerbacks? Justin Jefferson. I know Jefferson had some words kind of about Garrett recently, but like, Justin Jefferson every week beats whoever is thrown at him and puts up monster numbers. And Garrett Wilson, you thought after having 1,000-yard seasons with the worst quarterback play in the NFL, not even hyperbole there, like literally the worst quarterback play, that he was going to have a huge year with Rodgers. And I guess that's why you have to play the real games, and like, sports are not like a video game. Because in a video game, you're putting up 1,800 yards here and just like stupid numbers. But in real life, there's a lot more intricacies, and Rodgers is really like a tactician there. And the reason why his number one read is Allen Lazard is not because Allen Lazard's their best player. It's because Allen Lazard knows what Aaron Rodgers wants to do, and Garrett Wilson does not seem like he has any idea what Rodgers likes or what he checks to or anything like that. The biggest moment, obviously, for him in the game was that second to last drive from midfield. I think it was a second or third down. And, Wilson's like open up the seam. Rodgers throws it to him, and Garrett never even turns his head around, and the ball's incomplete. And it's just like, what was you're like, what was that? Like, what is this miscommunication? Like, Rodgers is clearly upset. Same thing happened on the next play with Xavier Gibson, but I don't expect Xavier Gibson to know. He's like their fifth receiver at this point. But it's just
he actually went to Garrett on back-to-back plays on that drive. He went to him on 1st and 10, incomplete pass, 2nd and 10. That's the weird. And there seems to be a theme where there's always one play that is just gross looking, that they're not only not on the same page, they are not on the same playbook. Like, Garrett Wilson looks awful, but I do not think it is a result of Garrett Wilson not knowing what is supposed to happen or him running the run routes. I think you hit the nail right on the head. Aaron Rodgers likes to make a lot of changes. There's a lot of signals at the line of scrimmage. He motions receivers to try to determine whether it's man coverage or zone, and based on that, he makes decisions. He makes audibles. He makes changes, and sometimes they're just hand signals between him and Lazard. My thing is if Garrett Wilson is your number one receiver, why aren't you're having those communications with him, coming up with signals, coming up with motions for him? Every time he would line up in the slot, it was a quick slant or a quick run. He never looked for him. And I get Patrick Surtain is a formidable corner, but he only lined up on 28 of 46 routes versus Garrett Wilson, which is a little over 60%. There were times, especially down the stretch, where Surtain wasn't even lined up on Garrett. On those passing plays where he went to his way, he was lined up on Lazard because he knew that Lazard was probably the first read, which is probably why Rodgers went to him on back-to-back passing plays. But if you're not making an effort to develop that chemistry or getting him in rhythm early on, by the time you go to him, he just doesn't appear to trust him, and that is a much larger problem, I think.
Yeah, I mean, what we don't know, right? To what you're saying is, we don't know what the conversations are in the building. We don't know what Rodgers and Garrett have talked about or worked on together. And I think it's up in the air to ask if, is Rodgers doing what he needs to do to get Wilson on the same page? I think the other question, just not knowing and, looking at it at both sides, is Garrett Wilson doing the work, not the physical work, but like the mental work, the homework? Did he come into this season thinking like, well, Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback now, this is going to be easy, and things aren't going that way, and now he's starting to get frustrated? I think that's in play just as much as like what you said about Rodgers. Maybe it's a little bit of both. Who knows? We don't know. I don't want to like wildly speculate. I don't think Garrett Wilson's like being lazy necessarily.
Right.
But you have to wonder, this is a completely different situation than he's been in before. They've kind of been playing like backyard football the last few years. And he was still getting his numbers even though they weren't winning. And yeah, it's been really surprising. I don't think anybody expected this to be a big part of the Jet offense this season. It's been really disappointing. And it's like, you kind of look at it and you're like, I'm not really surprised that they're 2-2 when their two biggest playmakers are not having good seasons. We're talking about Garrett, but the other thing we have to talk about is Breece Hall. Obviously today was like a meltdown blow up type game for him. He had dropped a couple of passes. He only rushed for 4 yards. Mark said like 0.4 yards per attempt, which is kind of wild. He only made like 2 catches for 14 yards, like really ineffective. He whiffed a few pass blocks. He had 2 false starts as a running back, which is crazy. Totally insane kind of game for him. But even if you look at the weeks before, not that he's been objectively bad, but when you think about the fact that this was a guy that people were saying like, this might be the best running back in the league next to Christian McCaffrey, number 1, number 2 pick in people's fantasy drafts, like another guy who had a huge year last year coming off the ACL with Zach Wilson and Tim Boyle and Trevor Siemian at quarterback. And, he was averaging less than 60 rushing yards a game coming into this game. And yeah, he's been splitting up time with Allen. He's been used as a pass catcher a lot, but still, it's just like, even in the games leading up to this, you were like, oh, he hasn't really like hit it yet. Yeah. And today it really just kind of like melted down. And that has also been like really curious. And he said after today's game, which I felt was interesting and like not a super positive way, was that he said he's the focal point of most defenses. Yeah. I've heard actually Garrett also say that recently.
I actually have that bite. Let's play it and then we can react to it.
It's been a little tough sledding for you. You haven't gotten fully going yet. I mean, what do you think that's a result of? Is it just loaded boxes? Is it like keying in on you? I mean,
I wish I could tell you, bro. Like, everybody, like my teammates know how much I put into it, and I know how much they put into it as well. So, for me personally, I just try to go out and just do my 111th every play, and Unfortunately for me, I haven't, I've been having the big rushing games and, stuff like that. But I just try to do my part in the pass pro, do my part in play fakes, communicating with Aaron, communicating with the O-line, and if I got to be in the receiving game. So, obviously I wish I could run for 100, 200 yards every game, but realistically, like right now, I'm the focal point of most defenses, so it's just really not happening.
I mean, that's just a complete lack of self-awareness, I think. I mean, that's
Yeah,
just struggling for answers. He just doesn't have the answers, and as opposed to coming out and saying, "I played a shitty game. I did not have it today. We'll look at the tape. We will figure it out." You know what I'm saying? Like, give me the typical jock answers. Don't
yeah.
go up there, and that's a lack of media training. But don't go up there and try to speculate and try to come up with an answer at the top of your head.
Yeah,
This
and
is
I'm
the
not gonna like crush him for it, but there's is a part of me that's like, okay, well, if Breece is saying he's the focal point of the defense and Garrett's saying he's the focal point of the deep, I'm like,
yeah.
you can't all be the focal point of the defense. Also, you're the best players. Like that's how it works. And the best players are the best because they do well and succeed when they are the focal points, and they're just so good that they
Yeah.
can overcome that. And yeah, I think part of this is like again on the coaching, like I don't think this is a coaching staff you can rely on to like scheme these dudes to success. I thought that this like east-west rushing approach they had in the game in the rain made absolutely no sense at all. I thought they should have been trying a little bit more like downhill running. But at the end of the day, it's like, it's the players and there's something off with both of these guys. And I think it's like different things are off with them. Garrett, it's more of like this like mental aspect of the game with Breece. I'm really not sure what it is. I almost feel like it's harder to figure out what's going on with him. Maybe it's just a few bad games or a few off games and one really, really bad one. I'm not really sure, but it's
I completely disagree. I don't think it's a mental thing with Garrett. I think it's a mental thing with Breece. I think it's a complete lack of confidence, and he's not seeing the lanes properly. He is not running with a decisiveness. He's almost like in his head. Whenever he gets the ball, you see him, that burst that we used to see from him is never there, and it's because he never hits the top gear. He's never seeing the lanes quickly enough because he's still trying to figure things out. And I think it's just they're asking him to do too much. I think they're overwhelming Breece because they are involving him so much in the passing game. He had 5 targets today out of the backfield, right? And it's difficult when you are not being spelled and you're asking him to do too much. He's still, a relatively young player. You know what I'm saying? Like he is clearly not having it. And it's just a vision thing. It's a vision thing because when you see Braylon come in, he sees the hole, he hits it, and he plows right through, and he's physical. And that doesn't mean that Braylon Allen is a better football player than Breece Hall. That is not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is that I think you have it the other way around, and I think Breece the problem is mental. Is the problem that you're asking him to do too much, and if he thinks he's the focal point of this offense, that means he is spending a lot of time doing a lot of like machinations in his head in terms of what his role is. We are going to be a pass first offense. Aaron Rodgers is no, it's going to be the focal point of our offense. It's going to be Aaron Rodgers in our passing game. It's supposed to be supported by our running game, but right now our running game has kind of whiffed and has been struggling the last few weeks. And I think that's not only on Breece but also on the coaching staff. Garrett, man, I wish I could figure out what's wrong with Garrett. I think he looks worse, but it's not him. Like it's not him not figuring things out. I think it's just they're just not on the same page. In your newsletter, I immediately thought that this was the game where Garrett was going to take advantage of Mike Williams' spelling him on the defense, putting and then just exploding. I really thought that he's going to get treated like a true wide receiver. No, but hey, shows how much we know. Any last thoughts before we move on to our next subject? I know we kind of went long on this one, but it's just we are seeking answers just as they are as well, I guess.
Yeah, I think you did bring up the rushing attack overall not being quite what we thought it was. I think that does kind of lead into our next segment quite well.
Indeed. Let's tough. Listen. The offensive line had a game today. Let's keep to forget. Let's keep the blame game going though with a unit that we really didn't expect to be critical of after today. But let's discuss the Jets offensive line in the third quarter of our show. The one big question we're expecting the continued progression that we've been seeing for the first couple of weeks from the offensive line. The one big question mark was Olu Fashanu stepping in at right tackle. Tell me a little bit about what you saw and what were your impressions of the overall performance of the offensive line today?
Bad. It was bad. I think that's the non-analytical analysis was, it was bad. First full game without Morgan Moses. We had Olu's first start. He definitely struggled at times. He had a couple good reps, but he had a lot of ones where he really struggled. Of the 5 false starts that the Jets had today, obviously 2 were from Hall, but 3 were from the offensive line. And the pass, as bad as the run blocking was, the pass protection was really bad. Worst we have seen all year. 5 sacks and 14 quarterback hits for your 40-year-old quarterback in the rain. And it didn't cost them, but you came close because Rodgers started limping in the second or third to last drive of the game.
Yep.
He was asked about it he did finish the game. He was asked about it by the reporters. He said he's okay. We'll see how that goes in a week when they go to London. People were speculating maybe it was his hamstring, but the OL was really, really bad today in a way that I really did not expect because, we talked about Denver in our bonus pod, really good pass defense in terms of their secondary, but they're not this huge pass rushing team or this defensive line that's going to eat you up like the 49ers are. So for that to have happened today, it was really surprising and could have gotten Rodgers even more banged up than he was.
Which again, Lee goes back to the question of the play calling decisions, right? You are starting a rookie right tackle. It's raining. And I know we have the confidence, all the confidence in the world on Aaron, but to ask him to pass the ball 42 times with a leaky offensive line who was struggling as the game was going on is just asinine. It's just completely asinine. And then we were calling in the second half, we were calling plays like we were down by 2 touchdowns and we needed to score quickly. We became a one-dimensional offense. We became what we were hoping to do to the Broncos and what they were for the most part. They were a running game. They were barely passing it. They were just throwing a couple of deep balls to keep us honest. But they did that to us, and we blinked first, right? We blinked first with our play calling because we abandoned the running game that was not working. And I get it. But you don't just totally abandon it in the rain and you just all of a sudden start passing the ball. You saw a lot of missed, a lot of underthrown balls from Aaron Rodgers. The hamstring was clearly bothering him in between series. He was trying to stretch it. On the sideline, you see that, and you still don't say, hey, let's just, call a couple of more run plays. Let's just
at that point in the game, you couldn't. There was 2 minutes left.
Well, what about the series before? Here, let's go. The series before when there were still 5 minutes left. We called 8 pass plays and 2 run plays when there were still over 5 minutes left in the game. And you're seeing your quarterback stretching his legs in between passing plays in the huddle. You know what I'm saying? 5 minutes left when you were just down a point. that's not the time to abandon the running game. And you're seeing your quarterback struggle with underthrown balls, consistently underthrown balls, missing wide open receivers. He was not playing well in the second half, right? And again, you don't get creative. You don't give me a screen pass. You don't bring in the 2 back sets. You just trust that Aaron Rodgers is going to get you over the hump, and you don't have the balls to say, hey, no, like, let's just figure this out and not become a one-dimensional offense that allows the Broncos to come back and sit and just rush their front four. They were getting there anyway. Fashanu played a better second half, but he was getting cooked in the first half. And it's just listen, man, I was confused as to the decision making. The second to last possessions, 5 passes, 2 run plays. Like, we just completely abandoned the running game. Like, it was just no outside runs, no. Give me a toss play. Give me something. Give me a screen pass to not let them pin their ears back and just come after the quarterback. They did a design rollout. Maybe Aaron called that on his own, but they did a design rollout where Aaron Rodgers ran the ball for like 8 yards. Like it just doesn't make sense. Like they don't comprehend that he's a 40-year-old quarterback, and they're like being so short-sighted, man. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think it's a testament of like the biggest issue at play here, that in, you know, each of our quarters and our segments, we're talking about certain aspects of the game, but in both segments that weren't about the coaching, they ultimately kind of turned back into the coaching. Like, that's how bad the coaching was in this game and leading up to this game. And yeah, like, one thing, and this has nothing to do with the offensive line, but just like you said, keeping them honest with screens. Why'd you draft Malachi Corley in the 3rd round, and why were you so pumped about it? Because they're like weekend at Bernieing this guy. Like, is this guy still around? Did he play today? I don't remember ever seeing him. I'd like to see him over Xavier Gipson at this point, who other than being fast, I don't think he really does much for you at this point, because you're not running any gadgety type plays for him.
We're just, again, listen, man, like, we seem to struggle recognizing when our team is not doing well. And if your offensive line is struggling in pass protection, if your quarterback has already been hit 14 times and you are not doing anything, give me heavy personnel, give me jumbo packages, bring in the tight ends. You know what I'm saying? Like, experiment with a fullback. Give me something to help out the offensive line. Give me a gadget play. Give me a jet sweep where you bring in Malachi Corley or Xavier Gipson. You know what I'm saying? Like, do something. Try something else. It's like that meme, the guy like poking, like, do something, bro. Like, come on, do something different instead of you just having a game plan. I honestly think that they were expecting the rain to subside, and they were expecting to always go pass heavy in the second half, regardless of what the score was. Because the weather forecast was the rain was going to pass, and in the second half it's going to be. And I feel like, and in my core, I feel like they just predetermined, oh, second half the weather's going to be better, we're just going to go pass. And we felt like we were down 2 touchdowns. It was a 1-point game. Like, what the fuck are we doing?
Yeah,
oh man, dude, it's fucking.
It's frustrating. Like, it's frustrating. We're definitely gonna get that explicit rating for this episode. Anytime the Jets lose in painful fashion, it's gonna probably be something like this. So sorry to that one guy who yelled at us after our first episode, but maybe earmuffs this one. But yeah, one thing, just to kind of bring it back to the offensive line before we kind of start to wrap things up and go to the last quarter, is, you know, I was watching intermittently some of the post-game comments. One of the ones that I did see was Elijah Vera Tucker was talking about the offensive line performance, and like, he did say like they have to be better. He gave Denver their credit, but like, he said we played our asses off. I don't want to hear that shit. And it's like, I don't want to get on players for like cherry-picked quotes after games. I do think that that's kind of lazy, and you take things out of context and you get mad at things. Like, we're not in a good mood. So I do want to kind of like say that.
Yeah.
However, it does like take you back to the idea that these players are not really held accountable, and that Robert Saleh is, again, too nice. And like, I don't want to hear like, well, Breece Hall, what did he say after the game? Like, well, I was trying hard. AVT said, well, we played really hard. It's like, cool. thank you for doing the bare minimum of being a professional athlete. You played like shit. I need you to say, like, we need to be better. Like, I hold yourself accountable, hold each other accountable. And yeah. And again, it's like, it turns into a thing about the coaching, but it's like, that's the thing. And I again, I don't want to freak out about like individual quotes, but I think the overlying theme of that is the bigger issue than like Elijah Vera Tucker said this one thing.
I'm sorry if you allow 5 sacks and 14 quarterback hits. You did not play your asses. You did not play your asses. Or maybe you thought you did, but you did not. It's just not. Your quarterback is limping. Your 40-year-old quarterback is limping, and you think that you guys did a good job. I mean, listen, I'm all about looking for the silver linings and stuff, but that's not what I want to hear. Cut that. Yeah, like, no, just say we need to do better. Give me that. Make me feel better. We need to do better. We're going to play harder. We're going to look at the tape. And again, we talked about, and I brought this up week 1, but what is going on when they're watching the game tape? Like, what is going on? Are people getting yelled at? Are people getting called out? I just don't see it. I don't, and I don't know what it is, man. It's gotta be listen, our show is going off the rails. Our show is going off the rails. We set a plan and we're deviating from the plan, and we're not adjusting very well because we're frustrated. And I'm sure a lot of fans are feeling the exact same way. And the only thing that made everything worse, honestly, Rich, was seeing Zach Wilson's smug ass on the fucking sideline, just with a giant grin on his face, just like handing jackets and towels to people. And he was just like, oh, you guys thought I was the problem. But yeah. And look, it doesn't get any easier. The only thing that makes a 40-year-old quarterback feel better is traveling to London and playing in a completely different time zone. Well, that being said, why don't we look ahead to the suddenly red hot Vikings and the Sam Darnold revenge game coming up next week. Oh man, I don't know about you, but like traveling across, into international, going overseas just makes your body feel really good. Makes you and like after playing a crappy game in the rain and getting your ass knocked into the ground several times. How do you think our 40-year-old quarterback Aaron Rodgers is gonna fare next week?
I mean, I think he'll be fine. Like, these guys are used to these trips, and at least they're on like a private jet. They're not flying
JetBlue.
Yeah, they're not flying Spirit Airlines. Shout out Spirit. Where it's like, oh, like, where's my uniform? It's like, well, you didn't pay for carry-on luggage.
That's extra, Aaron. That's extra.
Sorry, brother. But so it's like, is it ideal? No. But like, they'll be, in that respect, like, I think they'll be fine. It's, they have the full week, there's no like short weeks kind of stuff. So that's fine. Yeah. I think, the bigger thing is just like, is the best, maybe this is the best team they've played so far. Like,
no, definitely. I mean,
we're seeing what the Niners are still. Like, I still think eventually the Niners will be the best team that the Jets have probably played all year, at least like from the NFC side. But I mean, the Vikings are 4-0, man. They almost blew a huge lead today, but they didn't over the Packers. Jordan Love's first game back, but Darnold was really good again today. He threw for almost 300 yards, had 3 touchdowns, a pick. I think he fumbled as well, but his passer rating was like almost 125. Yeah, so like really good, which is even better than he's been all year, which he's been quite good. I think his passer rating coming into this game was like 112, something like that, which is like good. MVP type shit. Overall this year, I believe he's now up to 11 touchdowns with 3 picks. And you can look at the Steelers schedule, right, and be like, oh, this team has played literally nobody. You cannot say that about the Vikings. Yeah, they played the Giants, who the Giants are not as bad as we thought, but they're still like bad.
Yeah.
But since then, they have played the 49ers, beat them, the Texans, beat them, and the Packers with Jordan Love beat him too.
Yeah.
They look really good. I'm not confident going into this game, specifically because of obviously how this week went against a crappy Broncos team. Two things that would make me feel a little bit better are, one, you are coming off such a bad loss that it would be hard to imagine that they would be less focused after this. Maybe they were feeling themselves a little too much after like beating up on a crappy Patriot team and thought they were going to win this game easily. And this is just a team that still needs to learn how to win. Maybe they're coming off a really, 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 really bad loss. So I would have to think that they're going to come prepared. Doesn't mean that they're going to win. And this is the toughest matchup for this offense. And it's very different for this, for the defense. It's a very different matchup for the defense too, because they have been facing run first teams all year. Brock Purdy didn't throw a ton in that game. You got killed by that backup running back mostly because of the scheme. Against the Titans, Levis likes to run first, and you had Tyjae Spears in that game and Pollard. Obviously, and then the last two games, you had like Ramondre Stevenson. Everybody thought he was going to run all over the Jets. That didn't quite work, but that's the game plan. They really don't throw the ball at all.
Yeah.
And then you had the Broncos, who Bo Nix threw for 60 goddamn yards today. They don't like to throw the ball either. The Vikings are a totally different beast. Like they have Aaron Jones in the backfield. He's been like pretty solid for them, but they are a pass first offense. They're explosive. They're throwing the ball down the field. Like it's not the Sam Darnold that you remember. This is not the Sam Darnold from the Panthers, from the Jets, or even from the Niners when he spelled Brock Purdy a few times. Like this totally different dude right now. And it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be different in a weird way. Like it kind of plays to the Jets defensive strengths a little bit more, that they're not gonna have to worry about the run so much. But Justin Jefferson against Sauce that's gonna be probably the toughest matchup that Sauce has ever had in the pros. So that's gonna be interesting. And the one thing I will say that does make me feel a little bit better is this is really the first time all year that the Jets are going up against a defense that's not like totally dominant. I think they've had a weird run of going against like really good defense. Like maybe the Patriots defense is going to wind up sucking. They're getting beat up again today by a really Niners team, so not super fair evaluation. But Niners defense really, really good. Titans defense looks like pretty good. The Broncos defense, they're not as good as they were today, but like pretty good. Vikings not quite the same, and they don't have like this like shutdown corner either. So I don't want to hear any excuses for Garrett Wilson. So in some ways it's like, okay, you feel a little bit better just because it's going to be a different matchup that the Jets have had in the first month of the season, but it's also their toughest assignment. And I don't know how to feel about it. This might be the first game that I picked them to lose all year. I need to kind of like sit on it for the week and see how I feel. But yeah, there's definitely some major challenges. It's not going to be easy for them.
I'm like you, man. I am terrified about this game. The offense is formidable. Justin Jefferson pretty much kind of is known to take over games. Is known to take over games in a way that I hope Garrett Wilson is able to do. But it's just we haven't seen it. And I'm also terrified of Brian Flores, man. Yes, the numbers might not say how dominant that defense is, but they are tough, man. They are tough, and they have exotic blitzes and exotic coverage packages that'll just confuse you. And I'm not thinking that Aaron's going to be overmatched, but I'm just terrified. Like, look at what happened today. We went up against a decent pass rush and we just became one dimensional. We became pass first. They had 3 picks today. They've given up 59 points all season long, just a little over 2 touchdowns a game. And it's just like, they're fast, they tackle, they hit hard. They don't have like those name players the way like the Niners do, or like some other defenses, or the way we do, but like look how our name players are performing and perform today. So ultimately, it does not matter. I am terrified of Brian Flores, who might be the best defensive coordinator in the league, and just like,
it's weird that he's never gotten a head coaching job. It's strange.
I mean, it's strange when you sue the NFL and when you tell everyone that like your owner paid you money to lose games, might ruffle some feathers, and people might be like, hey, let's not hire that guy. But he is a good coach, and I am terrified, man. I am like you. I think this is the first time that my toxic positivity will prevent me from choosing the Jets as the winners of this game. Why don't we bring in Mark and see? Let's just wrap today's depression session up. Gentlemen, Mark, any final thoughts, man, before we wrap up for today?
I, like both of you, are very worried about this upcoming game. Sam Darnold revenge game.
Oh Lord.
I mean, the Jets have not played a receiver like Justin Jefferson all season. Maybe there is no receiver like Justin Jefferson in the league.
Right.
Certainly, Justin Jefferson thinks he's not like Garrett Wilson. And
so far, he's right.
Based on how both player seasons have gone so far, I think he has a very good point.
Yeah.
I think Aaron Jones is kind of underrated right now. He had 3 of his 4 games. He's had over 90 yards rushing. How much of that is a product of how well they're throwing the ball, setting up the run? Who knows? But Aaron Jones is a really good running back. He had a bunch of really good seasons in Green Bay. Aaron Rodgers knows him very well. I think he's going to be a big focal point. I think he's probably more underrated than you guys are making him out to be.
I mean, it turns out like when you can pass the ball, it helps the running game, and when you can run the ball, it helps the passing game. It's weird how that works.
Synergy. It's like a weird thing. I don't get it.
Maybe somebody should tell our team that. Rich, any last thoughts, man, before we wrap up?
I mean, today just kind of sucked, and yeah, we've talked a lot. I've rambled plenty. I think I'm more discombobulated when the Jets lose. It's total bummer. Hey, at least the Mets won today and at least paused their potential collapse.
And let's not forget the New York Liberty game 1 against the Aces. Let's go.
There we go. The New York Knicks traded for Karl Anthony Towns, so that was something. So not a great week for the Jets. We'll see about the other teams. But yeah, it sucks, and it's humbling, and it just kind of like, it's why it's hard for Jets fans to move forward, because it feels like every time you're about to, you get knocked back down in your ass. Maybe we look back on this moment in December and we're like, okay, that's when the Jets really like kicked it into gear, because they realized they really have to go the extra mile for this thing. But in the moment, not knowing what's going to happen, you're afraid that the wheels are going to come off, and we're just going to have to see what happens.
Yeah, man, listen. And the good thing is that after the Vikings, the schedule gets a lot easier. The Buffalo, the Steelers, the Patriots
in Pittsburgh. It's always in Pittsburgh, isn't it?
So should be a fun couple of weeks. It's really going to test us. It's really going to tell us after this stretch where we are as a team. I like to always compare teams to living organisms that evolve and grow and learn. And we'll know a lot. We'll know a lot about our team in the next few weeks. Who knows? We don't have a crystal ball. We feel like shit right now, but it is what it is. Hopefully this little depression session that we just had got a lot of things off our chest, and we can kind of wipe the slate clean. We'll look at the tape. We'll figure out what we're going to do next week. But again, gentlemen, thank you very much for keeping me company. I am actually still drenched from the game. My pants are still drenched. Maybe that contributed to my just foul demeanor, in addition to the fucking shitty ass performance on the field at MetLife. But thank you again for helping out. Thank you again for producing this and just making me feel a little bit better, getting it off my chest. And with that, we're going to wrap up the show. Thank you again from Ras, Rich, and Mark. Thank you guys for listening. I hope we have a good week, and then we'll pick it up next week.
Feel better, Uncle Scott.